Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Manikaran Singh Chakkar, and I am a research intern at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a matter of great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all to another edition of the ICS Wednesday seminar titled Reimagining Feminism in the Journey to the West: Agency, Power, and Gender Dynamics in the Chinese Classic. The Journey to the West is one of the four classics of Chinese literature. It was written in the 16th century during the Ming Dynasty by Wu Cheng'an. This seminar will explore the feminist dimensions of this classic, analyzing how it constructs and subverts gender roles within its patriarchal framework. This novel features several complex female characters such as Guanyin, Princess Iron Fan, and the Queen of Woman's Kingdom, each of whom challenges traditional gender expectations in distinct ways. By examining these characters through feminist lens, this presentation will reveal the nuanced gender dynamics at play in the journey to the West, highlighting both its reinforcement and subtle critique of the patriarchal ideologies in the classic Chinese literature. The speaker for today's seminar is Dr. Aditya Kumar Pandey. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Chinese of the School of Humanities and Languages at the Sikkim University. He earned his PhD from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, focusing on the Indic roots of the Chinese classic Journey to the West. He has studied at the Beijing Language and Culture University and the Renmin University of China. His research focuses on China-India cultural exchanges and comparative studies. The chair for today's seminar is Dr. Usha Chandran. She is an assistant professor at the Jawaharlal Nehru University and an honorary fellow at the ICS. Her research interests include women's subjectivity in nature, literature, the interface between gender and language, as well as popular culture, gender issues in China and comparison with India, and the use of sociological methodologies to study Chinese society. She is currently working on an authored book titled Gender Discrimination at Work in Urban China and an edited volume titled Gender in Language and Expression. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Questions may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. I now hand it over to the chair. Over to you, Dr. Chandran. Thank you.
Thank you, Manikaran. As I said, that this is an extremely interesting and I'm sure it will be intellectually stimulating talk by Aditya. We're really looking forward to it. I mean, when I look at it, it's very interesting that how this novel, which was written, although written on the 7th century pilgrimage of Xuanzang, but in the 16th century, with it's obviously Xuanzang's search for Buddhist scriptures, but the story unfolding itself in a mix of magic and fantasy, but also mixing it with social realities makes it very interesting. And because it has humor, it has political satire, it has allegorism of individual desires, and how the perseverance, how human beings are tested and trialed. And so it's a very interesting, it makes a interesting adventure, but it also has a lot of a huge number of female characters, which actually makes it even more interesting because of the female representation. So for me, I think I would be interested to look at three main representations. That is Xuanzang's mother, either Yin Wen Jiao, and the most famous one, the queen of the mother of the women's land, like women's kingdom. This whole idea of women's kingdom in a strictly patriarchal setup, which has been also narrated in a male constructed narrative and perspective. It will be very interesting. And the third is, of course, the goddess. So the Guanyin Pusa. So the mother, the wife figure, and the goddess figure. So these three, I think, for me, are the figures and the representation that I'll be really interested and looking forward to listen today. And comments for later. I'm really looking forward and waiting for your talk. Over to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Dr. Usha. And first of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to ICS and Professor Shabdi Mitra and Professor Alka Acharya for giving me this opportunity to present, something related to my PhD research work that is about the journey to the West. And thank you, Professor Usha, as well, for chairing this session and giving her valuable feedback. So to begin with, my basic PhD research, my topic was about Journey to the West and the Indic roots of Journey to the West. Since we all know that this novel is basically focused on Xuanzang's journey to the Western regions. The Western regions over here refer to India and the greater India that existed during that particular time. And so this novel basically is kind of a travelogue about that particular period. So, but now today, my research, this topic is an extension of what I did in my PhD. It's kind of a looking at Journey to the West from a new angle, from a fresh angle of feminism, from feminist representation. So just let me begin by sharing my presentation. I hope this presentation is visible to everyone. So as you all know, the topic of my discussion today would be reimagining feminism in Journey to the West, agency, power, and gender dynamics in the Chinese classics. So just to take you through the structure of my presentation today, I would begin with the introductory part that will introduce our viewers today about the novel itself and what is the basic nature of this novel, what makes it special, and why is it still so much celebrated in the Chinese audiences, amongst the Chinese audiences. Secondly, before delving into the topic itself, I would like to, stress upon the gender roles that existed during the Ming Dynasty. This would help understand the kind of the context why this representation of females and the women characters in the novel is so that is being said in the novel. Thirdly, I would like deep dive into the topic itself, that is the female characters of the novel Journey to the West. Here, I would like I would take you through the different characters. Although there are plethora of characters, there are, lots of characters in the novel, and because of the paucity of the time, I have selected a few characters that can be called as the representative characters of the novel. Finally, I would like to give my conclusion, like how can we reinterpret the women characters that have been, stated in the novel? How can we, see it from the modern feminist angle? So this is my structure. So without much ado, let us start the discussion. So as we all know, Journey to the West is one of the four famous novels of China. In Chinese, we call it as Ta Ming Chu Zhi, one of the four classics. It was written during the 16th century. That was the period of the Ming Dynasty in China. The authorship normally is attributed to Wu Chang'an, although there is, some kind of controversy regarding the authorship of the novel, and the people, they also attribute others regarding the authorship, but normally it is considered that Wu Chang'an wrote this novel. And this particular novel, it intertwines a lot of things. It intertwines what? It intertwines mythology, adventure, religion, and satire, as Professor Usha also pointed out. At its heart, at its core, this novel narrates the spiritual quest of the Buddhist monk Thang Sang Sang, okay, which is also the main protagonist of this particular novel, Thang Sang Sang. This character, as we all know, has been inspired from the actual character of actual person, that is Xuanzang, who visited India and the other regions during the Tang Dynasty period. So later on, the Tang Xuanzang wrote the Ta Tang Xi Yu Qi, the records of the Western regions. So lots of stories which we find over here in this particular novel, they draw inspiration from those records of the great Western regions. So at the core, it basically narrates the quest of Buddhist monk Xuanzang, along with there are some other disciples. He on the journey to fetch the Buddhist scriptures from India. There are some imaginary disciples which are added to the story. As you can see in the picture over here, the most celebrated and the most notorious character in this novel is the Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. Along with there is Pixie, which we call in Chinese as Chupa Chie. So Sun Wukong is basically a character which is very notorious, in nature. He has lots of powers. Also, he has the power of transformation, and then he has lots of powers of like flying in the sky and all. Chupachie is basically represented in the novel as a gluttonous kind of a character, and he often indulges into lots of wrongdoings, like eating a lot of food and all. So, and he brings a lot of comic relief to the novel. If you ask a normal Chinese person that which character you feel is the most funny in the novel, they will normally refer to Chupachie's character. Then there is Sha Wuqing, which is kind of a very modest and very calm and composed type of a character. We can also add a fourth disciple. You can see the horse on which Monk Xuanzang is sitting. That horse is called as Pai Long Ma, the white dragon horse. And it is revealed later in the novel that this horse was actually a prince, a celestial prince. And now in his current life, he has been transformed into a horse. So beyond this kind of imaginary plot, adventurous plot, this novel also serves as an allegory for spiritual enlightenment and moral cultivation. And this novel is also infused with a lot of religious thought. For example, it is infused with, of course, Buddhist thought, Confucius thought, and Taoist values as well. The novel's rich characterizations and moral lessons have made it a cornerstone of Chinese cultural heritage, inspiring numerous adaptations across literature, theater, film, and television. In fact, very recently we see that even a video game has been developed on the character of Sun Wukong, and it's gaining a lot of popularity in China. Another movie has been made about one of the characters of the novel, that is Nurcha, that has been loosely based on the character of Nal Kubra of Indian culture. So while this novel is celebrated for its humor, imaginative storytelling, we can also find a lot of modern feminist interpretations that can be revealed from the novel. And these interpretation can tell us about the complexities regarding the representation of women in that particular era, especially in the literature of the Ming Dynasty. It could also highlight the gender norms and the power dynamics that existed during the Ming Dynasty period, and even in the dynasties that existed before the Ming Dynasty. So going ahead, now let us first try to understand what were the traditional gender norms or the gender roles that existed during the Ming Dynasty that basically influenced different walks of life, including literature. The first and the foremost thing is the Confucian influence on gender roles. As we all know, during the Ming Dynasty period, there was a resurgence of Confucianism, and Confucianism, again came to the center role. And it can be, understood. It's a very self-understood kind of a thing that Confucian principles, they profoundly influence the societal structures, the societal norms, especially regarding the gender roles. Here we can say that the women identities were constructed through moral codes, and these codes defined the behavior, the responsibilities, and the social standing of women. Here, I have listed three, moral codes that were, mostly prevalent during this period, and we can see them as an example of the norms that were laid for women. The first one, which you can see over here, the San's Hong Se, the three obediences and the four virtues. This doctrine, it served as a moral compass for women's behavior. What do we mean by Sans Hong? It refers to the three obediences that before the marriage, a woman should obey her father. After her marriage, she should obey her husband. And after, just in case the husband dies, she should obey her son. Then the four virtues basically refer to Fu De, Fu Yan, Fu Rong, and Fu Kong. Fu De basically meant morality, that the women should uphold their loyalty and chastity, although there was no such, moral grounds laid down for men to uphold their loyalty. Then the second thing, the second virtue which the women were supposed to have was speaking in a very modest manner, that is called as Fu Yan, and they should avoid any confrontation, especially with the males. The third one was Furong, that the women should not wear a lot of makeup. They should not look beautiful. Beauty was considered as a taboo under this particular virtue. And the next one, as we can see, is Fukung, which is diligence. A woman must have some kind of quality, especially the qualities that refer to the domestic chores, the day-to-day chores, basically such as weaving, cooking, etc., sweeping the house. So what did this framework do? This framework basically relegated the women's role in the society. It, pushed the women to a corner, and their roles were only specified to domestic roles. It promoted submission of the women and led to the obedience. Now, if we talk about the second set of principles that is very commonly known in Chinese as San Kang Wu Chang, the three cardinals, and the 5 constant virtues. What do the 3 cardinals mean? The 3 cardinals basically refer to the social hierarchy. The ruler, it guides the subject. The father guides the son. The husband guides the wife. Now, the 5 virtues, the Wu Chang refers to humanness, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness. These teachings, they reinforced male authority in the society, and it also structured the societal hierarchies. It marginalized the women's voices, limiting their agency, limiting their power. Now, the last, which one I've given over here, is the nuanced Shu, the 4 books for women. This can also be seen as a regressive kind of thing in the society that existed during that period. This 4 books for women were basically, Confucian texts about ideal feminine conduct, how a woman should conduct herself. These texts emphasize on obedience again, humility, and domesticity. That the women should be, should stick to the boundaries of their homes. They should not go out. So these texts functioned as educational tools that basically reinforce the patriarchal values across generation. Now, if we see the status of women during the Ming society, when this novel was written, we can find a lot of points that tell us how the women were treated during that period. If we talk about the education and opportunities for women during that period, during the Ming dynasties, they didn't have a lot of opportunity for education. Their education was basically limited to poetry and calligraphy that was done at their home. Unlike the men, because men at this period, we know that men participated in the imperial examination, the Keju Kaoshi, and men could take up, important roles in the court as well, in the society as well. But on the contrary side, women were limited to poetry, weaving, sewing, calligraphy, all these kind of things. They could not take formal education. Formal education was there. We cannot say it was not there, but it was limited to the elite class of women, elite families only. And if a woman was educated, it was considered as a potential disruptor of the family harmony. That if a woman is educated, it would disrupt the family harmony. So that's why there was an underscoring fear of female intellectual independence. Now, talking about the marriage, family, and societal expectations during this period, marriage was a tool of family alliances. As we know, then in Chinese, we have saying called as "man tang hu tui," that marriages should be held between families of equal rank, equal identities. Similarly, here also we can see that marriages were held normally without a woman's consent. It was alliance between 2 families, okay? And the major role that women were considered to play was to bear male heirs, a male, son to the family. That reinforced the reproductive roles of the female and undermined their other intellectual roles. Here, if a woman became a widow, she was expected to remain loyal to her deceased husband. Okay, remarrying was again considered a taboo in this particular society, and expressing their own love, especially for a woman who is is a widow and is not married, was considered something a real big taboo. Okay, and if we talk about the work and public life of women during this period, while the elite society, the elite women, they managed, their household affairs, they had a control over their homes. But the lower class of women, the lower strata of women, they contributed to agriculture and only, very minimal kind of things. So they didn't had a very big contribution towards the economy or the politics in this period. So this is the condition of women that was existing during the period when this novel was written. Now, if we see the Ming Dynasty literature, I have stated 4 examples over here. These 4 examples, these 4 novels are the 4 representative works of this particular dynasty, Ming Dynasty. If we start from the left-hand side, topmost side, Shi or Qi, which we will, discuss in detail today. Then we have Shui Huchuan, the water margins, San Kuo Yanni, the dream of the 3 kingdoms, and Feng Shen Yanni, the investor of gods. So all these 4 novels can be considered as the representative literature of this period. So Shi or Qi we will be discussing in detail. If we talk about the second one over here, which is the water margins, the Shui Huchuan. Here we have a lot of female characters in this novel, which are portrayed as immoral and treacherous. This is a common feature which we find across the Ming Dynasty period. Women are most of the times represented as immoral and treacherous. Okay, reinforcing the trope of women as corrupting influences. For example, in Shui Huchuan, in the water margin, we have a character of Pan Chin Lian, which is, portrayed as a very seductress kind of a thing. And her character often indulges in things like adultery, betrayal, etc., which symbolize the anxiety regarding the female sexuality and independence. Now, the second one, San Ko Yani, again a very important novel, another part of the Sita Mingchu. Here also, women, they serve as a pawns in political maneuvers. Women are used as pawns, basically, for political maneuvers. Here in this particular novel, we have a character of Tiao Chan, one of the four Chinese beauties. Her beauty is used as a weapon in this novel to manipulate the male leaders, underscoring the perception that a woman's values lay in her physical appeal and the utility to men's ambitions. Talking about the last representative literature of this particular era, the Investor of Gods, Function Yani. Here we have a character of Tachi, which is depicted as a demon seductress. And her character embodies the fears of female power. Her character is often shown to allure the male forces, again, linking female sexuality to the societal downfall. These narratives show us what? It shows that the novels or the literature written during this period propagated the belief that a women's agency, unless it is aligned with the main interest, unless it is according to the male interest, it was considered inherently very dangerous. Now, talking about our novel, that is the topic of discussion today, Journey to the West. Here, I have roughly divided the women or the female characters of this novel into three archetypes. Although there is a plethora of characters, women characters especially, that exist in this novel, just for the sake of understanding, a better understanding, I have divided into three archetypes. Number one is the archetype of virtuous and gentle females, the females which are considered very morally right, upright, and very gentle in nature. The second archetype, which again forms the very core of this novel, is the ruthless female archetype, the demonesses, and the other negative, vicious female archetypes which are present in the novel. The third archetype, which is there in the novel but not in abundance, only few of them exist in the novel, is the boldly romantic female archetype. These are the females which are bold enough to express their desire, express their wish, and go against the wish of the male protagonists. So to begin with, let's first look at the first archetype, that is the virtuous and gentle female archetype. Here, as ma'am pointed out, one of the guiding features or the guiding light of this novel is the Guanyin Husa, the Guanyin Buddha, the divine motherly figure of this novel. So Guanyin Husa, or the Bodhisattva, she is the embodiment of compassion. And she, throughout the novel, since the very beginning of the novel to the very end of the novel, she stands as a watchtower, a lighting tower for the characters in the novel. And her portrayal in the novel stands as an exception because mostly in this novel, females are portrayed in a very vicious and negative manner. Her portrayal, on the contrary side, is very different from the portrayal of other characters in the novel. Her character embodies a lot of qualities such as moral authority, spiritual wisdom, and maternal compassion. She is the one who orchestrates Thang San Sang's pilgrimage. During this journey, as we all know, the Thang San Sang, along with the other disciples, they come across a lot of difficulties. In China, in the novel, it has been mentioned that they come across 81 difficulties, Pashri Tsainan. So across these 81 difficulties, this figure of Guanyin Pusa, the motherly figure, she comes to their help. Whenever they cannot solve these difficulties on their own, this figure of mother comes to their help. She aids them. The influence of this Guanyin Pusa's character, it subverts the traditional gender norms. As we know that normally in the other literature, we can see that women are considered only to play a subordinate role. But here, Guanyin Pusa, she exemplifies the Confucian principle of virtue, whereas at the same time, she also exercises authority over the other characters, which we can see in the case of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. as we know, the Monkey King is a very notorious character. Throughout the novel, he commits a lot of mistakes, a lot of naughty things. So whenever he does a mistake that is, simply not right, and it has to be corrected. This mother feature, the Guanyin Pusa, she comes and she punishes it. She punishes the monkey. And that is how she highlights her power, her superiority over the other male characters. Even Xuanzang, whenever this character appear, all the characters then kneel down in front of her, and she basically acts as a guiding light towards them. At the same time, she also wields a lot of powers, and through her compassion, she is basically kind of a guiding force for this entire novel. Her character can be, seen as an amalgamation of femininity and passivity, and that can be seen as an alternative model of female leadership rooted in spiritual authority. So this character, despite the fact that it follows the societal norms, it follows the Confucian norms, still it shows a new, kind of a feature of female authority, which was not prevalent in the literature of that particular era. The second character of a similar trait or a similar kind is that of the Princess Iron Fan. In Chinese, we call it as Thie Shan Gong Chu. So this Princess Iron Fan is mentioned as the wife of the bull demon king, Numa Wang, and she is the mother of Red Boy, Hong Hai. Okay, so her character also presents a multifaceted portrayal of femininity. She basically is said this Thie Shan Kung Chu because of the fan. As you can see over here in the picture, she possesses a fan, which is an iron fan. And in one of the chapters, we find that this iron fan becomes a necessary tool for the pilgrims to basically cross the flaming mountain, Ho Yanshan. When the pilgrims they reach the Ho Yanshan, the flaming mountain, they need this fan to extinguish the fire of the flaming mountain so that they can cross that mountain. Now, when they wanted this fan, initially she disagrees. She says that, I won't be giving you this fan. So this shows her autonomy. This shows that, she doesn't agree. She doesn't subdue to the male characters of the novel. She completely disagrees. But later on, when the pilgrims they request, and after a certain period of time, she agrees to give it to them. This shows what? This shows the compassion, the maternal devotion. And secondly, her maternal devotion towards her son also is being, shown in the novel. Her son, which is the red boy, Hong Hai, basically is very contrasting to her nature. Hong Hai in Chinese novels across different Chinese literature has a lot of negative interpretations. And her husband's character also. Her husband character is considered as an infidel character. In different parts of the novel, at different instances, we find that the husband of Princess Iron Fan, the New Mo Wang, the demon bull king, he cheats at her, but she remains emotionally invested in the unity of her family. But now, when Sun Wukong wants this iron fan from her, she, initially she says no, that I won't be giving you the iron fan. But after a certain period of, time, she gives up to them and then gives the iron fan to them. Now, her character also indicates a lot of, things. For example, her character complicates the binary of virtuous versus villainous women. Here we can see a binary, a kind of a dual character. It shows emotional depth. Her character has emotional depth. She has, emotional longing for her husband, for her son. At the same time, she has moral ambiguity. She has, she can also show power. She can also show command in the novel. And she also follows the familial obligations within that were existing within the patriarchal framework when this novel was written. Now, moving ahead, let's try to analyze the second archetype of the vicious or ruthless female figures in the novel. Such figures are found in abundance throughout the novel. There are, lots and lots of characters that you can find in the novel that are demonesses. But because of the paucity of time, I have picked up three characters that can be considered as representative characters. Number one, we have on the left-hand side, we have Pai Kuching, the white demon spirit, the white boat demon spirit, or demoness, whatever you want to call it. So this demoness, it comes across in one of the chapters of the novel, and she uses her beauty as a deception to lure Xuanzang and the other pilgrims. And she again has the power of transforming herself that basically reflect the societal fears of female duplicity and how she is killed, the nature in which she is killed underscores the moral values of that particular era, that whoso the female that has, that looks beautiful, or the female that has certain kind of authority must be subdued. The chapter in which she is killed in a way that Sun Wukong beats her thrice to kill her. That narration in Chinese is called as Santa Pai Kuching. Three times he beats her to kill her. And that lays the stress on the fact that, whenever the female garners an ambition to, marry someone, or basically an ambition to have an authority, their ambition must be subdued. Second character, which we can see over here in the middle, is the scorpion demoness, the Xiet Ziqing. Again, she has been described as a seductress in the novel, yet she is described in a very deadly manner. She has the body of a scorpion, half body of a scorpion and half body of a female. She attempts to force Xuanzang into marriage. So initially, she, disguises herself into a very beautiful princess and tries to marry Xuanzang. But later, when Xuanzang, because Xuanzang is a monk and he has to follow, this chastity, and he has to follow the Buddhist principles. So he disagrees with her proposal, and he says that I won't be able to marry you. So in at that instance, she transforms into a scorpion and bites the pilgrims. So here in this her character, we can see the anxiety surrounding female sexuality. Here in different literature throughout this period, females are represented as disruptive forces to the male spiritual pursuits. That males are having certain types of spiritual pursuits. They are trying to follow a certain type of spiritual life, but female characters, they are shown to disrupt those spiritual pursuits of the male characters. The third character, which is of very famous character, and again a character which is very kind of famous in China up till date, is the character of Jade Rabbit Spirit, the Youth Huqing. Here again, she is represented as a noble woman in the beginning. She manipulates the other people around her to achieve her goals. And she is shown to have, lots of ambitions, and she is shown to be a very cunning woman. And then later on in the novel, when she tries to lure the pilgrims, she gets punished. Okay. As you can see over here, her representation looks like the representation of an Indian princess. So in the story itself, it's shown that this princess, the Jade Rabbit Spirit, she marries an Indian prince, Tianchu Guo Wang, and then she becomes an Indian princess, Tianchu New Wang. So that's why she is represented in an Indian manner. So these depictions tell us what? These depictions, they caution against the women seeking power beyond the traditional boundaries, equating ambition with moral corruption. It shows that if you have ambition, it is considered as a taboo. It's considered as a corrupt thing. Just to give a quote by a famous French philosopher, Simone de Beauvoir, over here, who was also a feminist theorist, she said that every writer, when portraying women, reveals their ethical principles and unique perspectives in their writings. In her, they often unconsciously expose the gap between their worldview and their personal dreams. In this novel, which you are talking about, Journey to the West, the portrayal of female characters, whether goddesses, demons, or mortal women, they reflect the writers, whether it is Wu Chang'an or some other persons, their ethical values and cultural perspective of the writers. Because in this novel, women often serve as temptress or obstacles on the pilgrimage, exposing the Confucian Buddhist moral tension regarding desire and spiritual discipline. This aligns with the view of Simone over here, that Wu Chang'an's depiction reveals both his worldview shaped by the religious idols and the contradictions between moral aspirations and human temptations. Now, talking about the third archetype, which is not present in abundance throughout the novel, but the presence of such kind of characters, they throw light on the changing situation and also throw light on the importance of, women empowerment. As ma'am correctly pointed out, this is one of the most interesting chapters of the novel, the chapter of the female kingdom, the women's kingdom. In Chinese, we call it as Nuer Kuo. the women's kingdom. Here, the queen of the women's kingdom, queen of the women kingdom, Nuar Ko Wang, is basically a noble exception in the novel Journey to the West. Here, in this novel, this particular kingdom is shown to be completely ruled and inhabited by women. There is no single man over here. All the works, whether it is military, whether it's political, whether there is any other work, is done by women themselves. They are not dependent on the males. So this is a very unique kind of a thing. Although one interesting thing is that we can find a similar description, a similar depiction of a women kingdom in the Indic literature also. In Mahabharata, if we see, there's a description of Stri Rajya. So that Stri Rajya is basically can be considered as the prototype. This is something which I had worked upon in my PhD thesis. Stri Rajya can be considered as the prototype of Newer Kuo Wang, or the Newer Kuo, which is there in the this Shiochi, the Journey to the West. Both the stories which is depicted in Mahabharata as well as in the novel over here, they show a lot of parallels. For instance, in both the cases, the women, they are in power. They have the complete authority over the kingdom. There's no single male entity residing that particular kingdom. And they show power. At the same time, they have grace and dignity. This is a common feature. For instance, here in the Indic tradition in Mahabharata, Arjun, during the Ashwamedh Yagya, the horse of the Ashwamedh Yagya, it reaches to the women kingdom, the Stri Rajya. And the queen of the women kingdom, Pramila, she catches the horse and keeps it with her. When Arjun comes and tries to fetch his horse back, Pramila says that, okay, since you are here, I have an offer for you. Let's get married and let's, build a very strong kingdom. Although Arjun, because he already had a wife back home, so he says, oh, no, I won't be able to marry you. At this instance, she, basically becomes really angry and they were about to have a war. During this time, there was some, intervention from the gods, and the gods, advised Arjun that she is very much powerful and you won't be able to defeat her. So it's better to let go and compromise. So the same kind of thing can be seen over here in the novel Journey to the West as well. The queen of the women's kingdom, she proposes to Xuanzang. She says that let's get married. Xuanzang says that because I have those moral obligations, I won't be able to marry. But the only difference is in this novel, she, without any kind of confrontation, she says, okay, and she, lets Xuanzang and the other pilgrims go. So her character shows, despite the absence of men, there is female competence there and female autonomy there. This was a very rare, feature which was prevalent in a novel which was written almost 600 years ago, 700 years ago. Now, to sum up my research, my presentation for the day, I would like to, highlight some points about this particular novel that can be considered as a feminist reinterpretation of this novel. A feminist analysis of the Journey to the West, it reveals us that the characters, often constrained by patriarchal narratives, display varied forms of agency. For instance, in the beginning, we discussed about the character of Guanyin Pusa, the Guanyin. She has a spiritual leadership that guides the novel and guides the different protagonists of the novel. Secondly, Princess Iron Fan, she has maternal protectiveness. She protects her son, protects her husband. And thirdly, the queen of the women's kingdom, she shows political authority that basically highlight women's multifaceted roles. And if we talk about the demonized characters of the novel, even those characters, they embody resistance to the male dominance. They show a resistance, they show a voice against the male dominance. Their defiance, though it can be condemned by some, it challenges the status quo. Despite the fact that they have been portrayed as, merely sexual objects or seductresses in the novel, their existence itself, the very fact that they exist in this novel, it challenges the status quo, that it's not that the male characters will dominate the novel. It also suggests us that female power, whether it is compassionate, political, or rebellious, it is integral to the narrative's progression. All such kind of powers are required for the progression of the story. Now, if we reframe these characters, it will allow us a richer understanding of the texts and it can help us to explore the gender, power, and morality. Journey to the West, it also mirrors the patriarchal values of its era. As I've already explained, the male characters are shown to be of supreme powers, right values, loyalty, etc. Despite, a few characters have been shown as, indulged in adultery and all, but it's not considered as something as taboo. But if the same thing is done by the female characters in the novel, they have, they meet with a lot of, kind of disgust. Similarly, portraying women through the archetypes of virtue, danger, or temptation, we can reinvent or re-see this novel. A feminist reinterpretation of this novel uncovers layers of complexity and resilience within its female characters. These portrayals expose the contradictions of Confucian and Buddhist ideals regarding women, praising virtue when it serves male-centered goals while condemning autonomy and desire. However, through the persistent presence of influential female figures, it suggests an acknowledgement of women's indispensable role in shaping moral and narrative outcomes. If we reimagine these characters through a feminist lens that is required for the time and it's the need of the time, then we can form narrative devices into complex individual navigating societal constraints. These the female characters, they emerge as leaders, they emerge as nurturers, they emerge as challengers, and they also emerge as independent forces that enriches the texts, that is the Journey to the West, and the text exploration of human nature and spiritual growth. To conclude my speech for the day, I would like to say that Journey to the West remains rooted in male-dominated narratives. Despite this fact, the female characters, through the wisdom, through compassion, through defiance, and through love, they underscore the multifaceted dimensions of femininity and power. Recognizing these layers not only deepens our appreciation of the novel, but also invites ongoing dialogue about gender, agency, and representation within the Chinese classical literature. So these are some of my, this is a kind of a brief bibliography, some of the papers which I referred to while writing this presentation. And thank you for your attention. If there's any question, I would love to take it.
Thank you, Aditya, for this really extremely engaging talk. And I completely agree with you that actually, even though the journey to the West is rooted in the patriarchal mindset and cultural and social setup, but it does bring out the constant tension between the the women's resistance and the need for men to impose moral virtues, and and through women trying to live the traditional gender norms so as to you know continue the family structure, the social structure, and they think that which is extremely necessary to maintain the social order, to maintain women's morality and everything. But what is interesting is that again we have to be, I think, very careful about looking at these characters when we are. When we are talking about their agency and their power, because and how these women characters have been used to bring out, as you said, their indispensable role, right? Their indispensable role in also one, of course, in Xuanzang's his own personal quest, and also in reiterating traditional mindset and because as I look at it, it could also be that power is being practiced by these female characters, or it might seem to be against the male character, their husbands, but eventually it is to keep up the morality of the society. So that is also something we need to look at, because they are exercising their powers because they have to fulfill certain virtues of being
Right.
of being ideal women. Like when we
Yeah.
look at, it's interesting that why or how in traditional mindset, women have to be either subordinated or have to be superiorized, or, have to be superior so as to be accepted in the society. So the women either has to be a subordinate or has to be a superior, either a, queen or Guanyin. So that kind of a narrative and a male perspective under which this whole novel has been written and looked at, the women's role has been looked at in that perspective. So in that perspective, then when I look at it, it would be interesting if you could also explore more about the three ways in which the society and the male narrative would like to look at women. That is the mother figure, and because the mother figure, of course, is as we know that his mother was abducted, and therefore so the mother was abducted, and she constantly felt the need to save herself from the shame of being of to be to be to force to live with this evil, and then therefore she should kill herself because she doesn't deserve to be alive. But then how she saves the child and everything. But the point, I see a striking similarity with Sita. Right, she's been
Yeah.
tested again and again, and the fact that she's been put to test by herself because of her own construct.
Yeah.
And of course, in Sita, perhaps or more by her husband and the society and everything. So I don't know. I mean, a comparison to this. I mean, it definitely demands for a comparison.
Yeah.
Because when I look at the mother figure and how it unfolds, and then finally I think she attempts suicide 3 times, and
Yeah.
finally she
Right.
ends up dying, and that is just a very it's like the obvious result. Like Sita also, they say that Zameen Fat Gaya and she went in, but we don't know what happened. Basically, she died.
Yeah.
So that kind of a thing, I mean, comparison is extremely interesting for me if you could look at that.
Sure.
Also, the wife. Now, you just mentioned Fu Rong. When we say Fu Rong, it doesn't necessarily mean that women should not be beautiful. Women should be beautiful in a certain way
Yeah.
that is acceptable to the male-dominated society. It
Right.
should be, very subdued kind of beauty, innocent,
Yeah.
like a flower, that kind of beauty. The
Right.
beautiful, it's not that she should not be beautiful. So then the idea of wife, what kind of a wife or what kind of a partner one should seek. So that is something again to look at in this particular novel, where there are many examples, including the queen. And of course, we know that Xuanzang is in a quest to acquire the sacred scriptures. But whether it's also because this woman is a queen and she's in power, whether that power is something that cannot be easily acceptable by the as a partner, as a wife. That is something which you can look at. So that's why this three kind of image, and then the goddess. So why that? How is it that in normal life they would not respect women, or they would always have these rules for women, subordinated roles, social rules for women. But when it comes to Guanyin, everyone is respecting her and kneeling down on her because she is someone superior.
Right.
So these are I mean, again, reiterating about looking at this from these three frameworks would be extremely interesting. Yeah. So I'll just now maybe through the.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your comments. Definitely, what you're saying is very true, especially the thing that you mentioned about the female character, the mother character of Shwensang. It's one of the most interesting features. And the comparison with Sita can be done. And in my research work earlier, which I had done in my PhD, I have done a thorough comparison between Sita and the mother, and comparison of Sita with another character, that is the Jade Princess in this novel. Yeah.
Yeah, and also your mention about the women kingdom. Now that you've
Yeah.
mentioned Stri Rajya,
Sri Rajya. Yeah.
Sri Rajya in Mahabharat,
Yeah.
I can understand because I was actually clueless to some extent that how and why this idea of women's land might have come to the author's
Yeah.
mind.
Hmm.
And it could also be inspiration from Mahabharata.
It can be an inspiration, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to then look at the agency. So yeah, so I think I will open the event for the questions, and I think we would take more questions, and Aditya would like
Sure.
to. Are there questions in the chat box? Maybe Manikaran, you can read it out.
There are no questions as of now, Doctor. I would like to ask the audience to please put up their questions in the chat box, or you can alternatively use the raise the hand option.
Yeah, so as we are waiting for the questions, maybe I'm also it's interesting that all the monstrous female, evil female figure, they
Yeah.
are used their beauty.
Hmm.
You know how that their beauty is actually challenging this male perseverance and
Right. Right.
men's quest for their goals.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and therefore, this beauty is then obviously in the novel they are seen as evil and they are the monsters. But basically, in real life also, that is why with the same mindset, that beauty
Yes.
is seen as a threat,
Yes. Right.
and therefore, beauty should also be of a certain kind.
Yes, ma'am. So in fact, if we see, it is the same thing is reflected in the Indic traditions as well. In our, literary traditions, we can also find similar kind of characters that are treated as temptress and seductresses. For example, Vishwamitra and Menka and all. So we can find the plethora of characters that were written in India and China, both being, traditional agrarian societies. We share a lot of similarities in this particular thing.
Alka ma'am's hands are raised.
Yeah.
Well, one hand was raised. If you want, I can raise both hands. Yes, Aditya, it was a very, very fascinating talk, I must say, because these are not things which I'm sorry I can't. This thing, our electricity was just restored in JNU. I mean, the whole morning, and even now it is very patchy. So I will just keep the pressure to the minimum. So yeah, so what I'm saying is that. I mean, these are not things which come my way like in a normal course. So most of it was very, very informative. And I mean, how Usha explained that you either look up to a woman or look down. There is, you either, like in India also, we often say now that all our goddesses are women, but look how women are treated in society. So there's that huge gap between a patriarchal kind of a system, which does all sorts of unimaginable horrors to women, but you have this whole pantheon of women goddesses symbolizing power, symbolizing wisdom, knowledge, etc. So it's an interesting kind of a parallel. But what I'm just thinking about, and I just need some answers, maybe both of you and or Aditya, you've done your research. See this constant reiteration that women are creating barriers in the process of the pilgrim's route, in their journey where they are trying to undertake some spiritual, religious, going for some purposes which are of a higher order, and women become a barrier. So we also have our fair share of the Menkas and all the rest who tried to, lure sages away from their true chosen path. Now, what is ultimately underlying this notion that women are meant to be slotted in a particular way so that the objective of men, which is pure and noble and so on, does not get. So, is this therefore again reflecting that? So, unless the woman is powerful and is superior, all others really need to be put in their places. And this kind of a logic, I mean, where do you locate this? Is this Confucian? Is this, I mean, which kind of strand of Chinese cultural codes does this come out of? Is it linked to any kind of philosophical? So that's my question.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you for your valuable feedback. The thing that you said is actually very true, that women in most of the parts of Shiochi are considered to be, either seductresses or kind of a hassle in the way of the pilgrims, the Xuanzang monk Xuanzang, and the others in their quest for the Buddhist scriptures. Literature, I feel, is something which is very, depends upon on our own interpretation. What I interpret from these instances is, as you correctly pointed out, that the subduing of these female characters, especially the demoness characters and the vicious characters of the novel, it shows us that whatever characters, they do not follow the societal norms that were laid down by either Confucianism or Buddhism during that particular era, they had to be punished. They deserve to be punished. So such kind of notion was fed into the minds of the people, especially the readers of this novel, that you had to follow the societal norms. In case you tried to, go against the societal norms, or you tried to do something which was not there in the Chinese sets of ethics, you were bound to be, subdued, or you were bound to be punished. Secondly, the thing that you said, I think is about, just I forgot, was about, I think the female characters which have power in this particular novel, where this notion comes from, either it's Confucianism or Buddhism. Ma'am, I think it's a mixture of all the different religious and philosophical thought that existed in this during this period. In fact, we see Ming Dynasty was such a period which had a period of resurgence of both Confucianism as well as Buddhism in China. Buddhism again came to power. Buddhism again rose to power, and Confucianism also made some ground and restored its importance in the Chinese society. If Confucianism, I have dealt in detail during this presentation. If we talk about Buddhism specifically, lot of Buddhist texts, they talk about following norms to reach to the goals, following certain kind of norms to reach to the ultimate truth. And these characters are basically, in Buddhism, the principle asks us to refrain from, any kind of lust, any kind of desire. So these characters, these female characters, are basically the embodiment of those lust and desire. And they use these female characters to showcase the lust and desire, which is considered as taboo in Buddhism, so as to attain the spiritual goal. So this is what I feel.
I think if I just could add to that, it's basically the women triggering men's desire. Basically the trigger. And the idea is, of course, use the women and the characters are used, but the idea is to actually check men's desire. And that is problematic because, objectify. Therefore, all the evil characters are being objectified. They are being taught. They come out as beautiful first, although they are evil from inside. But they come out as beautiful. Their body is objectified, and they don't have any subjectivity. They don't have any. They have been shown as pure evil. That their only desire is to seduct this man. Whereas there's no talk about what is their subjectivity. So, and even the author does not want to delve into that because the writers or the narratives focus is male perspective. It is basically the male desire which needs to be checked. So instead of questioning the male desire, the female is villainized. So that's there is this anxiety even in the story. The Sun Wukong or other characters are also extremely anxious about beautiful women, right? They are anxious, they panic when a beautiful woman is coming. They panic. They panic because it's a problem. Because even I think that I read somewhere that one of the characters even created some confusion among them, right? Between Sun Wukong and Tangzang. So there is the panic. So panic is because of this uncontrolled or uncontrolled, one can say, desire of men, which needs to be checked, and therefore these female characters are villainized and used to basically remind the men of their path, of their whatever quest. And therefore, this whole idea of morality and everything. I think there's a question in the chat box, and an interesting question you can.
Yes. Dr. Pandey, there is a
Yeah.
question from Sudipta Das, an alumni from Sikkim University. He's asking regarding the connection between feminist reinterpretation of the journey to the West and the current underrepresentation of the women in Chinese politics, particularly in the CCP's leadership. So, is there any connection that you can think of or make of here?
Yeah,
This
so
is his main question. And there's another one, it's also related to politics in a way. It's by Ranu Kumari. She's second year master student in Chinese language at JNU. She asked, could the portrayal of the female demons, particularly the white bone demon, a deceptive yet powerful figure, be reinterpreted as a reflection of male anxieties about female influence in both the political and domestic spheres during the Ming Dynasty? Basically, what Dr. Chandran was talking about right now.
yeah. So yeah, thank you, Sudipta, for asking this question. The connection between the feminist representation of Journey to the West and the women's underrepresentation in Chinese politics, I think this is a part and parcel of the same. These are two faces of the same coin. Although this novel was written way back in the 16th century, a lot of time has passed since then. Still, in our society as a whole, not just China, but our world as a whole, the representation of women in different walks of life, whether it's politics, whether it's, any other walk of life, it still remains very underrepresented. And you're basically right about the underrepresentation of women in Chinese politics, despite the fact, the Chinese Communist Party, they are against the patriarchal norms. They, basically focus on male-female equality, and they also focus on, promoting, gender roles for the sake of social stability in China. But still, we can, find such kind of cases of underrepresentation of women that highlight that this problem is a deep-rooted problem, and it will take a lot of time and a lot of effort, basically. So the current, as we can see, the Politburo of the Chinese Communist Party, I think it never had a female member. That also, kind of reflects to the deeply rooted gender biases in China. I think Professor Usha will be in a better position to answer this question because of her expertise.
Is that you're referring to Ranu's question?
No, ma'am. So Dipta's question of Journey to the West and how can we connect it with the underrepresentation of women in the CCP?
I think it's a continuity.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the problem that every country is facing, right? And same with India, because the traditional mindset has not. But still, if we compare to earlier, and I mean, if we compare to women's political participation in China, and also women's participation at work and economic participation, I think it's way ahead of many, third world countries or even some of the Western countries. So yeah, I think it's just a representation of traditional mindset, which will take some time to completely change or break away from.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And to take the question from Ranu regarding the fact that the portrayal of female demons and demonesses in the novel, especially the character of the Pai Kuching, the white bone spirit, as a reflection of male anxiety. I think you are very right and apt at pointing out this particular thing. Most of the characters, the demonesses, they point out at male anxiety and the male complexities, that they are not very, confident about women being in the guiding role or women being at the supreme position. So this particular character also, we can see that Pai Kuching disguises herself into a beautiful young lady, and she comes and offers food to Xuanzang and the other pilgrims. Here again, a very interesting point which can be found between the Indic traditions and the Chinese traditions is that Sun Wukong, he leaves the premises where they were staying to fetch food, to fetch the alms for the bhiksha, for the pilgrims. Before leaving, he draws an imaginary lines across the pilgrims. It can be compared with, what happened in Ramayana, the Lakshman Rekha. So the same kind of lines he draws. This line also shows the boundary, the male anxiety, the male, kind of not being unsure about, the female equality, male-female equality. So what happens whenever Pai Kuching, she tries to cross this line, she gets burned and she could not enter this particular periphery. So you're right that this particular thing also showcases that they themselves were not sure about, women being in power, women trying to, being in equal status than them. Yeah. So I hope this makes it clear.
Thank you. Che, I would seek your permission to formally bring to an end to today's session.
Yes, please. Thank you.
With this, we come to an end to today's seminar. We thank Dr. Usha Chandran and Dr. Aditya Kumar Pandey for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. We also thank the audience for joining us today. The video of today's discussion shall be available on the ICS YouTube channel. Further, the information regarding the future events hosted by the ICS can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. Thank you for joining us today, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aditya, for this
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, everyone.
interesting and intellectually stimulating. It has left us with so many ideas and things to thought for future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Indeed, very refreshing, Aditya. Thank you. I hope you are going to